Park on Sullivan's Island will soon see renovations. Today, I talk one-on-one with Sullivan's Island Mayor, Pat O'Neill, for the latest on the park renovations for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Sullivan's Island Mayor, Pat O'Neill, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Happy to be here again.
Yes, sir. I'm bringing you back on because we're going to talk about Stith Park,
right,
which is right next door to us here at Sullivan's Island Town Hall.
Named after our former mayor,
wow,
Marshall Stith.
Stith. And obviously, over the past couple of weeks now, the public and council have been able to look at some of the design plans for the new park that's coming on board here in a couple of years. Matter of fact, I want to go back to Channel 5's posting on November 18th. It says, the town of Sullivan's Island has revealed updated master plan designs for the J. Marshall Stith Park after receiving the public's feedback. It includes pickleball courts, new and inclusive playground equipment, a pavilion, paths, and of course restoring the mound. So what's new, what's now with the new plan, Mayor?
Well, this has been a very long, ongoing process of months and months with a number of different public meetings. We had a team of consultants to help us look at possibilities. And I would say it's not so much to make a new park, but to come up with some enhancements and improvements to the existing park. The park that we have now is widely used. It's a very popular spot for residents and visitors. But it's got some years on it. And so we, rather than just proceeding kind of helter-skelter with improvements here and there, we wanted to try to get a comprehensive overview. So we had a blueprint of sorts that we could follow going into the future. We're not going to do everything that the consultants threw out as possibilities. And in fact, in a couple of cases, such as the case of a proposed swimming pool and also an observation tower that was proposed for the top of the mound, recently council voted to remove those from consideration at this time. And again, it's sort of a kind of a catalog of opportunities for the park.
Yes, sir.
We've elicited public input every step of the way, and we've tried to be responsive to that. Probably the first step in all of this that we would take on will be to address the drainage in the park, which is a problem, as is the case in a lot of places on Sullivan's Island. They're flat and low, and so water tends to stay wherever it falls. So we'll have to spend some money up front to try to improve the drainage before we do anything else. We don't want to put some other improvements in and then tear them up to lay down stormwater pipes.
Wow. Okay, so let me start right there, Mayor. So what exactly is the town's drainage plan for this updated park?
Well, we've got some general ideas from the consultants, but those are not construction drawings. So we'll have to put out a request for proposals for an engineering firm to give us, the plans that we can work from, and then we'll put it out to bid for contractors.
And how soon will you put up to that bid to the contractors?
Well, I think we'll probably be starting fairly early in the new year to at least get the specific plans back. It sounds like it takes forever, and all that it does. It's one plan leads to another, But you want to make sure before you pay somebody to start sticking shovels in the ground that you're getting it done right.
Absolutely. So I'm probably going ahead of myself, Mayor, but where would you put those stormwater pipes to prevent more drainage in that area?
That's up to the engineers. That's up to the engineers. But we've got some drainage there already. We've obviously got drainage and significant pipes here right next door, where Town Hall is. So it'll tie in there in some cases, and in other cases it'll go to the other side of the park where there is an existing ditch right now.
Wow.
So,
might be a silly question, but how long has that existing ditch been there?
I have no idea.
Okay. Okay. And how many more ditches can they put over there in that park?
Well, I don't think we'll be adding any more ditches. We don't want to create more hazards. But we want to make sure there is an existing ditch that it's doing its share.
Yes, sir. Now, I got to talk to you, obviously, about the numbers. So, money-wise, how much is this going to cost the town, separate from the actual construction, the upgrades to the park?
The estimate for the drainage work was about $425,000.
Okay.
And that's an estimate.
Yes, sir.
You don't know until you get the bids in.
And will that be, so how much will it be for the upgrades to the park itself?
Well, it depends on which ones we choose. So I really can't answer that unless I know which particular elements that we would be choosing. We're not going to do it all at once. We may not do all of it, period. as we go along. We'll continue to see what seems to be most important, but we want to make it a recreation facility that we can all be proud of and that people can continue to use going forward.
Yeah, I know personally I've used that park many times from 2020 until 2023, just sitting out there eating lunch and watching the kids playing up and down that
There
mountain.
you go. Yeah. Nice spot.
It really is. So let me ask you this. If you were to do all of this, say, for instance, in phases, will that save you all money or cost you more money?
It'll probably cost more to do it in phases because nothing gets cheaper over time. But at the same time, we don't want to bite off more than we can chew. So
Yeah.
we want to proceed methodically.
Sure, absolutely. And so, how many in total? How many designs do you all have in total?
Well, it says a number of different elements in it. I can't give you a number because I don't know which ones we would do.
Which ones are you leaning towards right now?
The drainage first, and then we figure out what comes next.
And I know
Because there's still some changes that we would probably want to put into place for the plan that they offered.
with that plan being offered, what changes would be ideal for the town right now?
No idea until we get into it.
Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned obviously town council basically eliminated the swimming pool and the observation tower.
Yeah.
So were those just for safety reasons?
Well, the swimming pool, we got the consultants to just show us if we decided to put a swimming pool there, where would it go? Where would be some good places for it? The reason we did that is because there were some residents who had expressed a desire to have a swimming pool for the community. The Sand Dunes Club, if you're familiar with that facility, when it was owned by the power company, they were good enough to let residents buy summer swimming pool access for their kids. But of course that changed hands, and so that was no longer available. But in the course of the discussions about that, a number of residents said they would really like to have a community pool. So we said to the consultants, no time like the present, tell us where it might go. Well, then we had a number of other residents that objected to it pretty strenuously. So, the process did what it was supposed to do. We got the idea out there, got it discussed. We learned that the majority of the people who wrote to us or spoke to us about it didn't favor it, so we took it off the plate. The observation tower was something the consultants had thrown in there, and there were several concerns there. One was the safety issue of adding height to something that's already pretty high, and then having to deal with it in storms and things like that. So.
Wow. With those two items that are being obviously taken away from this design plan, would the recreation department consider putting these in some other location here on the island?
I doubt there's many other locations we would want to do that.
Wow. And I know you mentioned Mayor earlier about obviously the park, and for lack of a better word, the wear and tear of it. How long has this park been in existence?
That's a good question, and I can't answer it precisely. I would guess sometime in the 80s, the 1980s. But you know what? One interesting thing about it is the bandstand that's out there was built by the Army. It was an actual bandstand for the Army band when Fort Moultrie was active here. And in fact, I'll show you when we go out here. There's the pictures from around 1910 or 1915 of the band on the bandstand.
Wow.
That structure has probably been in at least 4 different locations on Sullivan's Island over the years. The Army had it in 1 or 2 locations. When they decommissioned the base, it wound up in private hands and wound up on the marsh side of the island. Some people at one point actually owned it and enclosed it and added a little bit to it and used it as an apartment. And then later on, with an earlier council, they acquired the bandstand and had it moved over here to the park when the park was really being laid out, and had it restored to its early shape, earlier design. And then along came Hugo, and the roof wound up in the marsh, so it had to be retrieved and the bandstand again rebuilt. And so we recently, a few years ago, did some pretty extensive repairs to it to try to keep it solid going forward. But it's a very historic structure.
Wow, it really is. So you obviously talk about those repairs to the bandstand. So what is the maintenance for this particular park now?
Obviously, we have to look after the landscaping, the grass gets cut, the plants get, refreshed and tended to, and, as equipment wears out, we've had to replace it over the years.
Over the and how much of that equipment had to been replaced over the years?
Various amounts of it, depending on when it wore out.
Wow, wow. And we talked about it earlier, but what do you expect the final costs to be for this?
I have no idea.
Okay. Now,
again,
yes,
I have no idea because we don't know how much of it we're going to do.
Sure. And you obviously you talked about a lot of the kids playing over there, doing the active times of the day. Would you, when it comes to that playground, and I've seen it before, would you have it separate? A separate playground for the toddlers versus the older kids?
Yeah, we already do, and there's a lot of reason to keep the little kids away from the bigger kids.
Sure.
And I think most of the residents who came out to our open houses to look at different design options are in favor of that. There's a couple of different locations they could go to if we were going to relocate them.
Would you have to relocate them?
Yeah, I don't know yet.
Okay. Yeah. And what exactly would be the maintenance plan for the park once it's been upgraded?
We'll just need to continue looking after it like we do now.
Now, how do you look at it now as far as maintenance?
Well, we have, ongoing maintenance. We've got people that cut the grass, people that look after the swing sets and things like that, and try to repair them when they show signs of wear and tear. And in fact, we've spent quite a bit of money in the park over the years. This is not the first time we've done this. Not the first time we're spending a good bit of money on it, because we've had to resurface the tennis courts at various times.
Yes.
We've replaced the lighting for the tennis courts. So, that's all stuff that we've done in recent years that we don't plan to undo.
Right. And speaking of which, I know the new design according to Channel 5 includes pickleball courts, the new inclusive playground equipment, a pavilion path, and restoring the mound, as I mentioned. So how many pickleball courts do you foresee for this new upgrade?
That's yet to be decided.
Okay. And we talked about the playground equipment, of course, but that pavilion, would the bandstand be removed?
No, we're not going to get rid of the bandstand.
Okay.
The pavilion may be up for discussion one way or the other.
Wow.
But no, we want to keep the bandstand.
Sure. So in that pavilion, what exactly would be in that particular design?
Yet to be decided.
Okay.
Again, this is all more conceptual than anything else.
Sure. No worries. And restoring that mound, where do you start with that right now?
Well, the mound's there. It doesn't need restoration.
Now,
the mound is also historic because it was the site of some army batteries. So there's huge concrete structures that's under the ground that you see on the mound. Now, there were huge guns that were there installed by the army, I think in the early 1900s. Battery Capron and Battery Butler. And so, that existed for some time. Of course, the army left. And kids growing up here in the 50s and 60s, a lot of times would play all over that former military installation. I don't know how many broken arms there were back then, but over the years it was deliberately filled in. But all that concrete is still under there.
With that new mound, what else would you want to add with these new upgrades to the park?
There's more access to the top of it.
Oh, yes.
You can get up there now, but there's in the master plan, there's some ideas about maybe having some trails going up there.
Wow.
One of the uses of that mound, if you spent that much time here at all, is, for generations, kids have been dragging cardboard up there, sliding down the mound with cardboard. So there's been some back and forth about if we want to leave at least part of the mound in that kind of rough, natural state, so the next generation of kids can have the same memories of sliding down on cardboard.
Oh yeah, I've seen them do it in the middle of the winter there. Oh man, in the middle of that cold. And Channel 5 says that potentially this potentially more than $5 million project at the first, including a community pool with black lanes that would cost
No more.
no more. But a public survey of more than 300 people found that 87% of the people opposed the pool and preferred an open space. A pool, as you just mentioned, is no longer in the master plan, but designers did provide their design alternatives that would have applied if they were favored. Instead, the plan focused on restoring the mound, as you mentioned, as part of the playground and gathering space. The mound, as you mentioned, is a large third hill that served as a fort and battery throughout the island's history. The plan proposes paths to the top of the old fort where there would be an open park space and whatever, because that tower is not going to be in the plan. But how many of those paths will be included in that?
It depends on what we do on it.
Okay. And part of the access at the top of the mound would be a retaining wall with steps and a path leading down to the grove. The grove space featuring a community path, a pavilion that is, paths and greenery. But
Well, the pavilion is yet to be decided, too.
Right,
I want to emphasize that.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Would that be, well, how many design plans would you want to have for that?
Well, first we need to decide whether we wanted to go ahead with it.
Sure.
And
Would-
we've not made a final decision on that yet.
Now, would you have public, input on that?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay.
as we have all along.
All along. And I know the budget action plan for the project notes the town already paid $60,000 for the master planning and design work, starting with the public hearings in 2023 last year and leading to designs this year. The next estimate estimates $150,000 for permitting through 2025. Drainage and parking site work is estimated to cost around $500,000 and could get underway next year between that time and 2026. Parking. What is exactly the plan for that?
Well, parking is an issue everywhere here, as you well know. One part of the plan called for potentially creating a small parking lot for golf carts, since so many of the residents use golf carts here. So that might occur on one end of the island, one end of the park or another.
Park, whatever.
Yeah.
So who would actually, as far as pay for these costs? Would it be the taxpayers?
Well, it's the town, which is the taxpayer, sure. Yeah.
Sure. And would you ever, I guess, consider developing some sort of TIF district that would include the park?
No, that's not very likely. No, it's not. This is not the sort of thing that would apply to.
Okay.
We've got such a small commercial district
Yes.
that it really wouldn't be feasible.
Feasible.
No.
And going forward, what else do you expect from this whole updated version of the park?
Well, we have to start nibbling away at it and turn it into a reality. And again, I want to emphasize the master plan was the result of a lot of input from the citizens and some back and forth and kind of fine tuning things. But it's still somewhat conceptual, so we'll be proceeding in stages,
Yes, sir.
one step at a time, but within the overall organization of knowing that we're trying to put something together that's a whole.
And it's probably a redundant question there, but what, for lack of a better word, shovel-ready projects would you be in favor for to get this started right now?
Drainage,
Okay.
number one.
Number one. Well, Sullivan's Island Mayor, Pat O'Neill, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Wholesale.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Yes, sir.